Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your sommelier of cinema or sci-fi, your Archbishop of Banterbury, your Chancellor of Cheerfulness, and of course, your existential Mr. Rogers, Robert Meyer Burnett, coming at you once again, coming at you. Robcasting at you imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. Welcome to Robservations, episode number 406. I don't know how many days this is that we've been sheltering at home. I think the shelter-at-home order for California was March 16th or something. They're talking about reopening a week early. It was supposed to end on my birthday, but, you know, everybody's in such a hurry to reopen. I don't know if my days would really change that much anymore if we did reopen. But anyway, I've got a lot of work done. I saw that Gizmodo, the website Gizmodo, did an article about Brian Fuller's interview that I did with him. And that was pretty cool that somebody's actually out there paying attention. But very, very, very cool. And of course, I'm going to wish all of you, may the 4th be with you. Even though I think that shit is so dumb. I mean, I was there when Star Wars opened on May 25th. Seattle, it was a big deal. Big deal. I don't understand. Somebody comes up with a pun. It was not even a clever pun. May the 4th be with you. And Revenge of the 5th. And whatever. I mean, Star Wars Day is, was, and ever shall be May 25th, 1977. Nothing happened on the 4th of May that has anything to do with Star Wars. The first Avengers movie opened on the 4th. So maybe we should change it to some Avengers Day. I get it. It's a catchy pun. It's a marketing phrase. It's a greeting card thing. I get it. That's all fine, and everybody should have their fun on May the 4th be with you. But, you know, I don't want to yuck anyone's yum. So if you want to celebrate May the 4th be with you, go right ahead. If today is Star Wars Day in your mind, well, damn it, make it Star Wars Day. Make it count. Make it count. Absolutely. Well, ladies and gentlemen, an interesting show today. Interesting news, considering on May the 4th we had some really good news, and it was pretty amazing. But first, before I jump into that, there's some other news that dropped on Deadline. Look at this. Battlestar Galactica, Michael Leslie to write and exec produce Peacock's reboot of the sci-fi franchise. Mr. Robot Sam Esmail was the man, obviously, brought on. He had an idea to reboot the Galactica franchise, but apparently it is in the Ron Moore, David Icke produced series. It's in that universe somehow. How, we don't know, but I'm intrigued. I am intrigued. Color me intrigued, ladies and gentlemen. But this was interesting news. Exclusive. This was on Deadline this morning, by the way. Who wrote it? Peter White. It dropped at 11 a.m., so it dropped 2.5 hours ago. This news. Peacock's reboot of Battlestar Galactica has found its world builder, Michael Leslie, who is the lead writer and showrunner of AMC's spy drama The Little Drummer Girl and penned scripts for Macbeth and Assassin's Creed, will create, write, and executive produce the series. The new Battlestar Galactica comes from Mr. Robot and Homecoming exec producer Sam Esmail, who struck a big overall deal with NBC Universal's Content Productions last year. It is produced by Esmail and Esmail Corp. And UCP, with Esmail and Chad Hamilton also exec producing. NBC Universal's produced the original Glenn A. Larson created Battlestar Galactica series for ABC. UCP, then known as Universal Cable Productions, produced the successful Ronald D. Moore revamp that ran from 2004 to 2009 on the then Sci-Fi Channel. It's pretty cool. The original Battlestar Galactica centered on the last group of humans on the verge of extinction after a series of wars with a robot race, the Cylons, destroyed the 12 colonies. All the humans are left in one remaining battleship group anchored by the Galactica as they search for their last option for survival, a fabled 13th colony known as Earth. The series ran on ABC for just one season in 78-79, starring Richard Hatch, Dirk Benedict, and Lauren Green as Commander Adama, followed by a short-lived sequel, Galactica 1980, which was terrible. The sequel lasted 10 episodes in 1980, but it did spawn several book and comic series, a board game, a video game, as it gained cult status, if not commercial success. Moore resuscitated the franchise with a 3-hour Sci-Fi Channel miniseries in 2003, produced by UCP and starring Edward James Olmos in Green's commander role, Mary McConnell, Katie Sackhoff, and Grace Park also starred. and the success led to a series order. That Battlestar Galactica critical hit ran 4 seasons. A prequel spin-off to more series Caprica was canceled with 5 episodes remaining in its sole season. Several TV movies followed. Leslie will work up a reimagined world. Leslie's other credits include writing a contemporary screenplay of Hamlet for Riz Ahmed star in for Netflix. He also has a number of projects for Storyteller Productions, which he set up with P.J. Van Sandwyck. Storyteller's first feature documentary film, the iconic director Errol Morris's take on Steve Bannon, entitled American Dharma, premiered in 2018, and its drama and documentary includes projects with the likes of Ron Howard, Doug Liman, William Nicholson, Guy Ritchie, Morris, Stephen Knight, Alex Gibney, and Polly Stenham. Leslie said, "I'm beyond excited to be taking on this iconic and inspirational show. As a lifelong devotee, I know that the possibilities of Battlestar Galactica's world are infinite, and that each iteration has raised the bar for epic and intelligent sci-fi storytelling. The teams at Ismail Corp, UCP, and Peacock are second to none, and I already know that we're going to honor Glenn Larson and Ronald D. Moore's landmark series and break new boundaries with our own vision. It's a dream come true, one I just can't wait to share with fans, new and old alike, so say we all." That's very. I'm excited, to see what they do, and if it takes place in the same universe, this has all happened before. It'll all happen again. Maybe it's going to be canonical to that universe. It'll be interesting to see how they play it. I can't wait. I don't know if there's really much more to say about that universe, but I liked Bad Robot. I liked Homecoming. We'll see. Bad Robot, Mr. Robot. I don't like Bad Robot. Just kidding. You know me, but this is exciting. I mean, it's exciting. We've got some heavy hitter creators that I'm all about authorship, and I think this could be quite something that's going to be quite interesting. Now, on this May the 4th be with you day, I did watch the first episode of the documentary about the making of The Mandalorian. I talked about it on John Campia's show this morning. I thought it was good. I didn't think it was great. As I told people, I thought it was very sort of superficial. It concentrated on the directors, which I thought was really neat. But I, as a documentarian myself, I've been obviously doing special features now for 20 years. Just finished my latest. You'll be able to see on June 16th on the disc for The Hills Run Red, a movie I also produced. But Dave Parker and I did 6.5 hours of special features for that disc. And I thought that the Mandalorian stuff, beautifully shot, love that behind-the-scenes look. But what I wanted out of it was I wanted to know the origins of the show, and maybe they'll get into that. How did it come about? How did they decide on doing a show about the Mandalorian? Did they retool the Battlestar Galactica series? We've heard that Kathleen Kennedy put Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni together. My favorite part about the first episode of the documentary was hearing about Dave Filoni's hiring and initial interactions with George Lucas, which I thought was really interesting. I mean, I thought that was really, really great. I always love hearing about the process and how things get from A to B to C to D to actually get into production. But I felt that we were given, while it was neat, I thought it was a for the masses sort of by the numbers look. It was nice to meet the directors and all of that, but I really would have liked to have heard more about each one and their philosophies of filmmaking and how they approach things. Like John Campia pointed out, Deborah Chow looks like a beast. She's amazing, and she really knows her stuff. She actually cut her teeth making shows like Mr. Robot. So she looks to be a force of nature on the set and clearly comes in prepared and really knows what she's doing. So really looking forward more than ever. There's one thing that I took away. My takeaway from the Mandalorian documentary, episode 1, was that I think that the Obi-Wan series, or whatever it may turn out to be, is in very, very good hands. Now, that said, being that it is the 4th, May the 4th be with you, and Disney obviously wanted to co-opt all of our hashtags to be used however they wanted to use them. That was last week's outrage or whatever, but I don't blame them. Why not? If people are hashtagging stuff about the property you own, why shouldn't you be able to use it? Everybody gets all outraged. Look, if you're going to tweet it, Disney owns it, that. If they want to use it, okay. They can use it if they want, I think. But today some very exciting news dropped, and for those of you who might not have heard the news yet, I will tell you all about it. And here it is, ladies and gentlemen. Also from Deadline this morning. Taika Waititi to direct and co-write a new Star Wars movie. Again, this was dropped at 9:20 a.m. I think it was dropped on the Star Wars website first. Patrick Hypes at Deadline picked this up. Taika Waititi is sticking around in the Star Wars universe, with Disney confirming Monday that he will direct and co-write with a new Star Wars feature film for theatrical release. He will co-write the movie with Krysty Wilson-Cairns, who co-wrote Oscar Best Picture nominee 1917 with Sam Mendes. Here's why I'm very, very excited about this project. That right there. I'm all about authorship. I'm all about, you've got one man, one Academy Award for screenwriting, adapted screenplay for Jojo Rabbit, and then you have Krysty Wilson-Cairns, who was nominated for Best Screenplay, original screenplay, for 1917. Now, that alone makes me very, very excited for this project, because I'm all about authorship. This is going to be something I would imagine new, something bold. We don't know where it's set, but the fact that they are going out with an Oscar nominee, they're going out with an Oscar winner, and this is a bold move. I'm a huge fan of Taika Waititi. I think his work is great. I think he has his own point of view, and obviously the last episode of The Mandalorian that he directed was a pretty great piece of not just TV, but also Star Wars entertainment. And he brought the requisite humor, I thought, but also the destruction, the death, what we expect from a movie or a TV show with the name Star Wars in it. It's very exciting to me that we're getting what I would say is an auteurist director to come on board to co-write and direct this with another Academy Award nominated screenwriter. I am not a fan of the Disney sequel trilogy, and I think where it has fallen down is the writing. And I just think that the quality of writing that I've seen from the creativity, going back to What We Do in the Shadows, which I loved, it's so funny and it's so witty. And to know that Taika Waititi, who is coming on board and making original movies and doing adaptations, he's really, I think, becoming one of our best filmmakers. Some people might not have liked what he did with Thor Ragnarok. I personally loved it. I thought it was great. I thought it harked back to a lot of the Walt Simonson, Jack Kirby-esque stuff that I really liked growing up as a kid. And I enjoyed it. I thought it worked really well. Do I want to see a movie that's that funny in the Star Wars universe? Perhaps not. But I really did appreciate, we already got a taste of what he would bring to the Star Wars universe with The Mandalorian, and that was on a TV budget and a TV schedule. So I am extremely excited to see what this could bring us. Waititi, who won an Oscar this year for adapting the screenplay for Jojo Rabbit, which he also directed, and which was nominated for Best Picture. I mean, he is a Best Picture nominated director as well. Already has his hand in the Star Wars game, having directed the season finale of Disney Plus's The Mandalorian. He also voiced the bounty hunter droid IG-11 in the series, which marked the first live-action Star Wars series and has been a big hit, with 2 more seasons at least on the way. There's no release date for the new movie, but as far back as January, that Waititi, who showed his tentpole chops with the hit Marvel pick Thor Ragnarok, was approached. We heard about that. Obviously, it was reported on back in January, to be involved in a big screen Star Wars feature. Waititi's current directing project is Next Goal Wins for Searchlight Pictures, about the underdog American Samoa soccer team. He also has Thor Love and Thunder, which he wrote and is also set to direct. That movie has a November 5th, 2021 release date. Also, in the Disney family, he is behind a Flash Gordon animated film for Fox. The confirmation of the new pick today by Walt Disney Studios comes on May 4th, known as May the 4th among Star Wars aficionados. The studio also used the day to confirm that Leslie Headland is in development to write, executive produce, and showrun a new Star Wars series for Disney+, joining The Mandalorian and 2 other series, one based on Cassian Andor prior to the events of Rogue One, and the other the Obi-Wan Kenobi series starring Ewan McGregor and set between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope in the Star Wars timeline. After Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker wrapped the 9-film Skywalker saga last year, the only planned Star Wars movies currently in the works are Rian Johnson's announced trilogy. Another trilogy that had been announced from Game of Thrones duo David Benioff and D.B. Weiss did not end up going forward. And of course, Bob Iger himself said that Star Wars was going to focus for the foreseeable future on movies. Look, I think this is a bold move. We can talk about how it's not going to happen, or we can talk about all kinds of things and Kathleen Kennedy this and all that. But I'm telling you, you've got Oscar nominated for Best Picture, Oscar winner for Best Adapted Screenplay, another co-writer that was also nominated for an Oscar for her writing on 1917. This is the kind of announcement that I want to see about favorite franchise movies. And I think it's a bold move. I think it's a great move. And I think it's what Disney needs to be doing. We should be getting Star Wars films all the time. And they should announce these. They should tell us what it's about. And I'll tell you, I think they already know what it's about. I think they've really settled on what it's going to be about. I think development has already been going on for this project for a long time. And I'm convinced since Taika Waititi came in and did an episode of The Mandalorian, this is something that has been percolating for quite a while. This is not something that they're going to be like, nah, we don't know what it's going to be, or maybe there's going to be a trilogy. I don't know. I think whatever this is, based on this announcement, what I know about how the industry works, I think this is a something that we can all get very excited about. I really, really do. I think this is going to be something special. I think it's going to be something that's worth getting on the bandwagon for, getting excited about. Now, there's a lot of people, I know, there's a lot of people that didn't like Thor Ragnarok as much as I did, but I understand, and I get that, but I would say look at Taika Waititi's overall work, and I think, and including, we've already had a taste of what he can do with Star Wars. That last episode of The Mandalorian I thought was one of the easily of the 8 episodes, if not the best, one of the best of the series, and I think he really has a handle on what Star Wars can be. And I think this is what they need to do. Now, what'll be interesting is rather than just announce this, I think they did announce it because it's far along, it's far enough down the line. I'm sure they're deep into pre-production on this because why not? I think it's a bold move. I do. I think it's great. I'm very, very excited about this, and I'm overjoyed actually. And obviously, we're shut down. Who knows when production is going to resume in Hollywood again? I don't know. But I do know on movies like this, all the pre-production time that you can have, the art departments can be working. Production designers can be home sketching. There's ideas. If there is a script, and I would imagine they're probably deep into writing this script, this movie is being conceptualized, it's being visualized, it's being thought about, and they're doing what they normally do in pre-production for a movie like this. It's moving forward. And I think that's why they announced it, because they're being careful and they want to make sure that, they don't make premature announcements without being able to back it up now. And I think it's pretty damn exciting. And I'll tell you why I think it's important for the franchise. Obviously, The Rise of Skywalker did not turn out the way people had hoped. And, to be honest, it's a really lackluster film. And I was disappointed in Rise of Skywalker. I thought that it just, there's no there in the film. And that's not to take away anybody that might have enjoyed it. I honestly, I don't know what the story was for that movie. I really, there's some interesting scenes in it. It doesn't hold together. I still don't know why Palpatine comes back. How he came back, don't tell me to read a visual dictionary or something else. It's not in the movie. It doesn't make any sense. Palpatine didn't even really do anything. A lot of nonsense in that film. There's no verisimilitude. As your viceroy of verisimilitude, I'll tell you, there's not a lot of verisimilitude in The Rise of Skywalker. None at all. And I think what the franchise needs is strong writing. And we've got 2 Academy Award, 1 award winner, 1 nominated for screenwriting. And that's where movies begin and they end. You've got to have a good screenplay. You've got to have a good story. Obviously, we don't know what era this is set in. We don't know anything about this movie. Is it set, the High Republic? I don't know. I have no idea. Is it Knights of the Old Republic? Who knows? I don't know. All I know is I think what we're going to get is really interesting. And I think this is a bold move. And the fact that they announced it on May the 4th, they're excited about it. They're really excited about it. So basically, today, that's all I want to say. And I want to say that, yes, this film excites me. I think it's got the pedigree that we need. And it's good. It's good to be. I'm excited again about Star Wars. Watching The Mandalorian while the show The documentary show is not quite what I'd hoped. I hope they do a deep dive into the origins of the series and we find out why certain decisions were made. Maybe we won't. Maybe we will. I don't know. But I certainly enjoyed the brief glimpse. I always love seeing behind-the-scenes footage and a peek behind the curtain. So that's good. But this announcement excites me. It's the first time I've been excited about Star Wars in a long time. So, yeah, very excited. Very excited to see where it's going to go. I'm going to put on my glasses, and I'm just going to jump right into what you guys have to say. First of all, I've got a letter. I've got some letters. Yeah. Let's see what I got, ladies and gentlemen. What I got today. I forgot to say this. Can you imagine how excited I would be right now if I had, say, a Willow Yang letter talking about Deep Space Nine? How happy would I be? Well, let me tell you. I'm very happy because I do have a letter from Willow Yang about Deep Space Nine. And I got to tell you, who would have thought that on May the 4th be with you, what I would be most excited about is Willow Yang's letter about her dive into Deep Space Nine for the very first time. As you all know, Willow Yang has her own section on the Burnettwork.net website, Willow Talk. Willow will talk you. I mean, if you want to put your head on the pillow and listen to the sultry sounds of Willow Yang's mind, let me tell you, her letters are where it's at, and I'm about to read one to you right now. Greetings, Rob. I'm writing to discuss my first impressions of Deep Space Nine. There are two things that really stood out to me when I first started watching the series. First, the show is quite dark, and I mean that literally. The colors are considerably much more muted. That actually did bother me a bit initially because I felt at times as if I was watching the show through a screen that was covered in dust. I have since gotten more adjusted to the lighting. Secondly, even though I'm quite certain from all the bits and pieces I've heard that Sisko does eventually become a captain, this is the first time I've seen a Star Trek show that doesn't have a captain or a starship. However, since the space station is apparently conveniently located near a wormhole that leads straight to the Gamma Quadrant, I guess that will make for some interesting encounters with all the different races there. I do, however, still look forward to seeing the crew on board a ship at some point in this series. Spoiler alert, you will. With regards to the main characters, I really appreciated the rather diverse cast. Rather than being dominated by humans, there's now a Bajoran, a Ferengi, a Trill, and a Shapeshifter. And, unlike The Next Generation and Voyager, where I thought that the actors needed a few episodes to grow into their roles, I did not feel the same way about Deep Space Nine. Everyone felt comfortable with their characters from the get-go. Of course, we have a familiar face in Colin Meaney's Miles O'Brien. I thought Avery Brooks was great as Benjamin Sisko, and in spite of my distaste toward most kid characters in Star Trek, I actually quite liked Jake. He behaved believably as a young kid without being overly annoying. I find Kira to be a little prickly at times, however. That appears to be suitable for her character, given her background. Armin Shimmerman is hilarious as the greedy and shady. Seriously, though, are there any Ferengi that's not greedy and shady? Well, you're going to meet one. You're going to learn to come to know one. Quark and the dynamic between him and the stoic, uptight Odo was very entertaining to watch. While I do like Terry Farrell's Dax, the one thing that has been a bit disappointing to me about the portrayal of the character thus far is that I don't really get the sense that they are someone who has lived multiple lives as different peoples. I understand that the personality we see is a combination of both the host and the symbiote, but I do hope they explore a bit more of Dax's past lives going forward. Oh, they do. I'm not overly fond of Bashir right now, even though I think that Alexander Siddig was good in the role. I just find the character to be a little too idiosyncratic, and I find his constant pursuit of various female characters, in particular Dax, to get annoying. I will give my brief impressions for the first couple of episodes. The pilot, Emissary, not to be confused with The Emissary, which is a TNG episode, really started off with a bang, no pun intended. About 5 minutes in, the ship that Sisko was serving on gets destroyed by the Borg, a number of his friends and colleagues die, and he loses his wife. While I personally really appreciated the new direction and tone that Star Trek has taken, I must say I wasn't a particularly big fan of the plot involving the Bajoran prophets and the mystical orbs. I actually found some of the dialogue in these scenes to be almost like that from a video game. You must find the celestial temple before they do. New quest, find the celestial temple. I also found the entire sequence of the incorporeal wormhole aliens communicating to Cisco via images of people from his own memory to get too repetitive after a while, although, of course, this moment was important for his development as a character. The second and third episodes both featured some rogue Bajorans. The former episode, Past Prologue, introduced Garrick, who I know will be a recurring character throughout the series. I quite enjoyed him. He was a welcome change from the typical angry and sinister Cardassians that we're used to seeing. And of course, the episode brought in more TNG characters and the Duras sisters as they continue on their scheming. While I do like the tie-ins between the two series, I do hope they don't rely on it too much, since the galaxy is quite a large place. The latter episode, A Man Alone, featured even more familiar faces, specifically O'Brien's family. Now, I do have a burning question about the triphasic cloning that Udan used to frame Odo. Since I know nothing about the technique, I'm just going to assume that it magically makes a person with the exact appearance down to any tattoos, scars, piercing, or any other non-generic features they may have. I have to ask, though, what memories does a clone have? It wasn't mentioned at all in this episode, other than Sisko's log at the end, stating that Udan's second clone has gained consciousness and began a new life. Okay, I guess the first thing that you want to do once you've gained consciousness is to get yourself an erotic massage? The final episode that I want to mention is Babel. Or is it Babel? Babel, mostly because it felt eerily relevant given the current situation we found ourselves in, with quarantine orders and the shutdown of all shops and businesses on the station that weren't considered essential. I'd just love to see how the Ferengi are going to be able to deal with a massive pandemic if one hits their planet. I can't imagine them willing to sacrifice their economy for anything. Moreover, can you imagine how much hoarding and price gouging is going to happen? Of course, the virus ends up infecting all the station, but I give the episode more of a pass than I did with TNG's Genesis. At the very least, the crew did everything they could to contain the spread, and they also had the added problem of Quark refusing to abide to quarantine laws. These are just my quick thoughts on the first episodes of Deep Space Nine. I'm about halfway through the first season. I'm currently taking a break from Star Trek to catch up on Better Call Saul, and it's been mostly mediocre thus far. While there wasn't anything as cringy as the first season TNG episodes like Code of Honor and Angel 1, there wasn't anything outstanding either. However, I do quite like most of the characters and the change in format and tone, and I know the series will only get better onwards. Live long and prosper, Willow. Well, Willow, let me just tell you, the show gets way better. The first season's a mixed bag. I like the pilot quite a bit, but the last two episodes of the first season and the first 3 episodes of the second season make a great 5-part, well, it's not really an arc, but a great 5-part story. And by the end of the second season, you'll be locked into the show. But it does take a while to get off on its foot, and a lot of people complain that, well, it keeps changing its premise. But I do think it's an amazing, amazing show, as you will discover. And by the time you get to the 4th season, all bets are off. So, yeah, you're going to like it. I'm glad to hear that you liked it as much as you did. So that was good to hear. Will also sends in a tip and says, can you do more of your Hercules voice impression? To be honest, it does annoy me a bit how all Greeks, Romans, Egyptians, Asgardians, aliens, fantasy characters, villains in the media have to have British accents. Well, don't you know, British people are just smarter than the rest of the world. It's a very strange thing about the whole idea of British accents. To me, people who have British accents, they just sound smarter. I know it's what a silly thing to say, right? I mean, I get it. It's pretty silly to think that or feel that, but maybe it's because I grew up with classical British actors like in things like I, Claudius, which is one of my favorite things that's ever been on TV. And the whole idea that Shakespeare came out of England. And there's just something, tonight's Whining About Movies is about The Elephant Man. And in The Elephant Man, you have Anthony Hopkins in an early role where he received acclaim. The movie's obviously 40 years old now. And I just recently received from England, from the UK, the beautiful Studio Canal 4K restoration of The Elephant Man that's actually a 4K disc, and that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. And I just think that in my own mind, America was the land of the Western and the land of gangsters, and the English language as spoken and obviously in Shakespeare's time, English is very different than it is now. But there's just something about classical storytelling. You need some kind of an accent. And since you're not going to be speaking, like, I don't know if I would want a Greek English accent. There's just something about classical storytelling that I think if you're going to do a Hercules movie, you need to have a British accent, even though that makes no sense either, because back in ancient Greece or Rome, you're going up to Mount Olympus or whatever the hell you're doing, no one's going to be speaking with a British accent. That makes no sense at all, no rational sense at all. But it's just a trope that's so ingrained in my mind that I think that you must speak with a British accent. And I don't know how Hercules would speak. By God, the gods owe me. I don't know. I don't know how. That's more old. Of course, you might have a Hercules that speaks like this, but that's more of an Australian, I guess. I don't know. I am Hercules, the strongest man in the world. I honestly, I just don't know why that is. But Chris Hemsworth is an Aussie. But I could see him being able to do a British accent. I could see Chris Hemsworth, and maybe it's because, of course, he's already Thor, so seeing him in the role of Hercules isn't a stretch for me. Whereas I don't know if I could buy Chris Pratt as Hercules. I don't know if I could buy it. I don't know. But they have to, in my mind right now, British accents are a trope, and it's a movie trope. It doesn't make much sense, but I kind of think that's how we got to be. Matouine sends in a super chat and says, the final 4 episodes of the Clone Wars are some of the best in the Disney era. The music had a Blade Runner vibe. You could feel the tension, no dialogue necessary. The final wide shot of the last episode really got me. I have not watched season 7 of the Clone Wars. Now that it's all out, I can binge the whole thing, and everybody's been talking about the last. It's interesting. It started out slow. People are like, it's not very good. And then, of course, we get to the last 4 episodes, and it's mind-blowing. And I can't wait. I can't wait to experience it. And I think that's great. Of course, I've heard Ahsoka Tano plays a big part of these final episodes. I don't know what part she plays, but I am very excited. Stubble McShave sends in a tip and says, I'm not sure if I like the Battlestar Galactica news. If the creator wrote Macbeth and Assassin's Creed, I have doubts on how it will turn out. Both of those movies were really bad. I saw the Macbeth, and you're right, it wasn't great. But you know what? You can't always, I don't always blame screenwriters. I mean, when screenwriters write something and someone else directs, and it doesn't work, I give something, I don't immediately write off the screenwriter, because I've seen enough things in my life that I've seen scripts that were really good turn out not well based on how they were made. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. He's worked on a couple of the things I thought were great. So Mukbang sends in a super chat and says, general channel support. Well, Mukbang, I very much thank you for that general channel support. I very much appreciate that. Stub McShave sends in another tip and says, do you think the new Lord of the Rings series are troublesome to create? They have some key events from the source material, but they're not fleshed out into real stories. The writers have a lot of work to do, and it will inevitably be compared to the movies. Look, I think making a Lord of the Rings TV series is, I don't want to say a fool's errand, and especially a Lord of the Rings TV series set in the Second Age. First of all, I think that was a really smart thing to do. You set it in the Second Age, and you know where you're leading up to. You're leading up to the first War of the Ring. And I think that is rich, fertile ground to cover. And basically, it's you've got the prologue of Lord of the Rings, so that sort of gives you an idea of what we're going to delve into. But you can create something totally brand new, and if they could do something really, I think they could do something really, really, really interesting. And we'll see. But again, it all comes down to the writing. And I hope good idea. And I think that they will. I mean, I'm excited about this new Lord of the Rings series. I think everybody knows they've spent so much money getting the rights that they're going to be looking over this show. I think it's going to be, we're not going to see a repeat of season 8 of Game of Thrones. And, you know, whether you liked season 8 of Game of Thrones, and I know there's people that did, I felt it was sort of a betrayal of, once again, YouTube is giving me a hard time. Nope. I'm seeing a flickering screen. This is a YouTube issue. This is a YP. This is your problem, not an MP or whatever. It's very weird that happens. I don't know why. But yeah, so it's going to be a strange thing. I think that this show is going to be good because it has to be good. There's so much money riding on this show that I think it's going to be a good show. But we'll see. Again, it is going to be compared to the movies. And in a way, if you're doing this, the movies are so seminal in people's minds. The movies are so good that it's a good, like, knowing that you're building up to Lord of the Rings and that it has to be that sort. I think it makes it easier to do. I hope, at least. We shall see. We certainly shall see. Factual Opinion sends in a tip and says, when I saw the DS9 episode Duet, I said to myself, finally, a good episode. Yeah, for me, that was exactly where Deep Space Nine became fantastic, was with Duet. And again, like an episode like Measure of a Man, which is essentially a bottle episode, it's such a good episode. And then I also think the final episode of the season, In the Hands of the Prophets, is also a terrific episode of the show. I mean, the thing about Deep Space Nine, to be honest, is they really were trying different things each season. They were trying to find their premise. You know, they had this idea of, okay, the adventure comes to you. We're not going out to find the adventure. We're on a space station. The adventure is going to come to us. But they didn't really know what to do. I mean, they had this geopolitical situation with the Bajorans, but you'll find out that even through the first season and then the second season, the whole Bajoran issue gets a little tiresome. And even then, they found ways to do better with it as we get into the season. I remember in the second season when you get to the episode The Jem'Hadar, I don't want to ruin it for Willow, but I was like, wow. I mean, to me, that was a real watershed moment in the series. There's good episodes, but yeah, I think, and by the time you get to the third season, we're off to the races. But yeah, it's interesting to see how I can't wait to see how Willow's journey through Deep Space Nine goes. It's been very interesting reading her reviews. She's obviously incredibly intelligent, and her analysis is very cogent and well-reasoned, and I think the great thing about when Willow writes in letters and when she's watching these things, she's taking them in the spirit they're intended, but because she has no necessarily connection to it now or then, so she's not bringing in any baggage. She's watching it for what it is, and there's none of this overarching thing like, I have to love this because it's Star Trek. I mean, she really gives everything a fair shake, and that's why I really like her analysis of the shows. So when she gets to Duet, I'd love to hear her write a review of Duet. And actually, I'd be curious if Willow, do an experiment for me if you're so inclined. When you get to the last 2 episodes of season 1 of Deep Space Nine, Duet and In the Hands of the Prophets, and then the first 3 episodes of season 2, I'd be curious if you were to write a review or an overview of all 5 of those episodes, how that would appear to you. I think that would be great. Mukbang sends in a super chat and says, Joker was so good. What does Phoenix do next? Man, I don't know. That's a tough act to follow. I don't know. I think, he's made some pretty interesting choices in his career. I think whatever he's going to do is going to be pretty interesting. We'll see what he does. Once an actor's done something like that, I think his management, his people, his team, there's a lot of pressure on an actor to do something unique and something groundbreaking. But some of the time it pays off if you pull back and you do something completely unexpected, something that maybe is completely 180 degrees from what the Joker was, something lighthearted, maybe a romantic comedy. Can you imagine? I don't know. Alexander Wilson's here. Hello, sir. Watching The Last Dance, which is phenomenal. I found out that Michael Jordan Michael Jordan's help funded Spike Lee's Malcolm X. I did not know that until now. What Alexander is referring to is there's an ESPN documentary called Last Dance, and everybody's been talking to me about it. And I need to watch it. And it's all about Michael Jordan, apparently. And there's lots of crazy stories, too. But everyone loves this documentary, and I can't wait to watch it. You know, one of my favorite things, I'm not into sports. I don't follow sports, but I love sports. I love sports movies. I love seeing documentaries about sportsmen and women. I don't know, there's just something inherently interesting to me about, in order to play sports to the point where somebody's making a documentary about you, you have to be great at that. And usually to be a great sports person, like a Michael Jordan, it's a lifelong calling. It's a lifelong avocation. And there are very few people in the world that can do those kinds of things. So I can't wait to see Last Dance, Alexander. I think it's gonna be great. Mukbang sends in a super chat and says, I love the Willow Yang letters. It took my mother 3 seasons to get on board. She's a Trekkie bona fide original series, but I quiz her now on Deep Space Nine, and it's great fun. Well, Mukbang, that's always good. I love the fact that your mom is a Trekkie and is into Deep Space Nine. That is pretty dope. We shall see what she has. Well, does she watch it all? I guess she has. Enterprise H, NCC 1701H is here. Praetor of Profanity. That's a new one. Greetings. I'll try and make this a short letter. Would you happen to know why they insist on making people swear in Star Trek but not bother or want to create a main Tellarite character? It never made any sense to me. To make this letter more interesting, why haven't they explored the Tellarites and Andorians more and how their philosophies influenced the creation of the United Federation of Planets and Starfleet? In FASA, the FASA is the role-playing game. In FASA, the Federation Charter, FASA is the company that made the role-playing game. In FASA, the Federation Charter was based on documents such as the Andorian Pledge of Triumphant Security. That sounds totally dope. I wrote that just so I could hear you say, totally dope. All the best. Enterprise H, NCC 1701H. Well, I think the obvious reason why they haven't had a Tellarite character, unlike we saw Shran and obviously the Andorians, I thought played a big part in Enterprise, and I love the Shran episodes. I love how the Andorians were portrayed. But I think Tellarites, you're talking about a full facial prosthesis that is made up of many parts. Like to do a really great, I mean, with Klingons, it was one thing because you've got the pieces they could make, but a Tellarite, you've got probably more pieces around a mouth and then the nose, and I just think it was probably too expensive. And honestly, I think there's a racial prejudice against the Tellarites. I just think the powers that be on Star Trek think the Tellarites are goofy looking. The pig people. I think they're prejudiced against the Tellarites. I honestly do. I think there's a racial issue going on there, and I think that the Tellarites are discriminated against. Because I like the Tellarites, and we've seen a couple. But they've never been a real big part of Star Trek. But I'd like to see more. How do you vote, Sarek of Vulcan? Holly Hudson is here, and Holly Hudson just writes in and says, I look forward to seeing awesome content in the future. You know why I think Holly wrote? Well, Holly, I'm going to bring you awesome content in the future. And that reminds me, for those of you who might have forgotten or haven't done it yet, I am running a sweepstakes on this channel. You call it a sweepstakes? No, it's a giveaway. I'm running a giveaway, and it's leading up to my birthday, which is next week. May 15th is my birthday, and I am giving away, thank you to the lovely folks at Harman International and specifically Connie, who is in charge of the Experiential Engagement Department at Harman, which is a subsidiary of Samsung, and they oversee JBL. And we on this channel are giving away something that isn't even available to the consumer market yet. Comes out May 31st, the consumer market. That is the the JBL Bar 9.1. The JBL Bar 9.1 is a soundbar that has Dolby Atmos. There's actually 10, if you include the subwoofer, 10 speakers, 10 channels. And it's pretty amazing. You've got satellite speakers that pull out, wireless satellite speakers. And it's pretty rocking, I gotta say. I'm a big fan of this piece of equipment. Just shy of $1,000, and we are giving away one of these on my birthday to celebrate 400 episodes of Robservations. And you don't have to pay anything. You can just go down to the description that's in this chat. You can find the link. You go through and you just follow the little widget, put in your email address, and we will, in fact, on my birthday, I'm going to draw one lucky name out of a hat, and we shall see. Perhaps you will be the lucky recipient of the JBL Bar 9.1 with Dolby Atmos, which is pretty, as far as I'm concerned, which is pretty dope. So there you go. I've said dope twice. I hope somebody doesn't say that that's wrong to say or something. I would not like that. Anyway, Omar94, our man Omar, he's like writing daily letters. Omar, how's Ramadan going for you? I hope going well. Hi, Rob. With movie studios losing so much money from COVID-19, do you think they will have to sell certain companies they acquired in order to pay off the money? For example, Disney would have to sell one or more of the companies they own, like Pixar, Marvel, Lucasfilm, etc., in order to pay off the money, or Warner Brothers having to sell DC in order to pay off the money. I will admit, while it's not good for Disney to be in financial trouble, I would actually be okay with them selling off companies they currently own. I only say that because I have the apprehension that others have, where Disney will become a monopoly. I don't know what the reason is for doing so, but Disney should stop buying other entertainment companies and let there be more independent companies out there making content. Maybe Disney feels threatened other companies will surpass them in terms of box office and or entertainment quality, so these companies get bought in order for Disney not to feel threatened. Thanks, and live long and prosper. Well, Omar, thank you for that. Disney is not going to sell off what they own. It's way too lucrative. And yes, this COVID-19 pandemic has made people rethink things. And in the last 2 months, life has gotten pretty wacky. But a company like Disney is going to it'll remain solvent. It's not going to go bankrupt. I mean, remember, it's not like nobody could pay these things. And it's not like people didn't have good credit. It's just that everything stopped. Everything came to a grinding halt. And there's, a lot of people that aren't going to be able to pay because there's a ripple effect. I was reading an article about Airbnb people that invested in all these properties, and their Airbnb payments were able to pay those mortgages. And they were betting when they're overextending themselves, they just knew they were getting money from their lodgers or the people that came in and utilized their Airbnb services, their properties. But with nobody traveling, suddenly it's all drying up and people are losing everything that they had. Now, I'm very sympathetic to those people, but they were there. That was gambling. And I think one of the things that I've noticed in this with this whole pandemic is that there's a lot of gambling that goes on in capitalism, obviously. And I think that that's one of our problems is that, true capitalism should work, but everybody wants more money. Everybody's greedy, and everyone cuts corners, and everyone tries to get a little bit more rich, and everyone's got their scams going to get more and more and more money. And maybe one of the byproducts of this situation is that people will be like, you know what? Maybe we better play a little bit more rather than, balancing on the teetering edge where in 1 month we can get ruined, which is, I know a lot of people are like that. I know I'm like that. I can't afford to not be working for any length of time. But, even bigger companies, they've got to, let's shore up your defenses. That's what we need to do. We have to start saving for a rainy day. Well, we're getting a rainy day now for 2 months, maybe 3 months. We'll see where this is going to go. But I don't think Disney's going to sell any of their products. I don't think they're going to get rid of anything because they're all very lucrative and they're all obviously crown jewels. And pretty much everybody's in the same boat. I mean, you're not going to, unless, Apple comes along and is going to buy something. But I don't see that happening. I don't. So we shall see. I mean, we'll see what happens. Alexander Wilson sends in another tip and says, are you up to date on Better Call Saul? I am not. The last season was some of the best television I have seen. I can't believe a show about Saul and Mike reached the heights that it did. What's surprising is those two characters were not in the original Breaking Bad plan. No, that is true. One of my favorite things that I own in my physical media collection is the 50-gallon drum. I mean, it's not a real 50-gallon drum. It's a fake 50-gallon drum a 50-gallon drum with all the Breaking Bad episodes in it, and it comes with a really great documentary on the making of the series. And you did find out that, yes, Mike Armitage and Saul Good, they weren't in the show, and the fact that they it's a perfect example of writers sinking their teeth in and really understanding. There's both Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul are perfect examples of what great show running is all about. I mean, those are going to be looked at as the pinnacles of dramatic television for a long time to come. And they are beautifully written. They're character studies that also have action and also have intrigue and also have romance and all kinds of things. Everything you want out of a compelling drama. And remember, Better Call Saul is a spin-off. It is a sequel show and a prequel show. So it's an incredible feat that they were able to do it twice. And of course, we have one more season left to go on Better Call Saul, and I'm sure it's going to blow the doors off because they had it plotted. They knew what they were going to do. And it's really interesting. I mean, as they've gotten closer and closer and closer, obviously, to the Breaking Bad timeline, it's been really fascinating to see where that show has come from and where it's going. And Alexander, I agree with you. I wish we could get a Star Trek show that is that good, and that we have writers. And the problem is, you need the showrunner. You need Vince Gilligan. The showrunner has to have the vision to pull that off, and that is rare in that. You know, before I did this show today, we were recording an Inglorious Trexperts episode with Dayton Ward and David Mack, who are two of my favorite Star Trek novelists, and they were architects of the Star Trek Vanguard series, where they basically created all new characters and all new situations that ran concurrently with the original series. And it's a novel. It's a series of novels, but they did it like a David Mack wrote a Bible, a series Bible, and I believe there's 10 novels in the Vanguard series, 10, I think. And when they were doing that, they created, it was like it was run like a TV show. They had different writers pitching book ideas, and then they all challenge each other. And I'm like, why, if you read the Vanguard books, there's so much great Star Trek thought put into those books. I'm like, why not do that? You know, why not adapt? Why not go there? And it could have been really, really interesting. So yeah. Mukbang sends in a super chat and says, tell us once again, for those who missed it, how Taika will impact the Star Wars movies. Well, okay. I think Taika is a visionary director. He's coming off an Academy Award nomination for Best Picture for his movie Jojo Rabbit. He won an Academy Award for adapting the book that it's based on. And whether it's his past films show that he's made four. Now he's finishing up his fifth feature film. All of them are all pretty original, and they're very different stories that he's done. And he's working with another Academy Award nominated screenwriter who wrote 1917. And I mean, and then look, I'll bring it up. You want me to say it? I'll say it. Taika Waititi's not a middle-aged white dude. He's a Pacific Islander. I think he's Maori. And then, of course, you're dealing with a woman. So, social justice. But no. You've got, obviously, a woman who co-wrote 1917, and Taika Waititi, who made The Mandalorian's final episode. The pedigree there is exemplary. And I think why it's important and what's going on that I think is going to make the movie good and what we've got going on there good is that you have really talented, visionary people who have already proven themselves that they know what they're doing. And I think after witnessing what Taika Waititi did on his final episode of Mandalorian, he's already dipped his foot into the Star Wars universe, and we're going to get something that first and foremost is going to show a really good writer at the top of his game, working with somebody who's at the top of her game to create something that we've all been waiting for, which is a Star Wars film that has real authorship behind it. Look, my problem with J.J. Abrams is I have not seen J.J. Abrams have a voice. And what we've seen from him, I haven't liked any of the movies that he's made. Not one. I think the one I like the most is probably his Mission Impossible film. All he's done, with the exception of Super 8, is work in other people's franchises. And to my mind, he's made those franchises, well, dumb. He's dumbed down everything that he's worked on. He dumbed down Star Trek. He dumbed down Star Wars. And I just don't think he has the kind of talent that someone like Taika Waititi has. So I'm curious to see where it's going to go. I mean, once again, look, Rian Johnson, whatever you think of him, he is an auteur. He's a writer-director. And while I get people's problems with The Last Jedi, I'm not here to get into a debate. I think The Last Jedi, does it hold together entirely as a film? I don't think so. But there's a lot in it that I find pretty interesting, and there's a lot of authorship in Last Jedi. Whether you think it's right or wrong, well, that's something else. But I thought there's enough interesting stuff. Look, the problem that I have with the Disney Star Wars trilogy, the sequel trilogy, is that it was wrong-headed from the get-go. There was an idea that we have to tell stories about these new characters, and look, any corporation's like, we're not going to bet our $4 billion investment on a bunch of middle-aged people. I mean, Harrison Ford in his 70s and Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher in their 60s. Like, how are we going to get the kids to come see this? This was a mistake. And, it's easy to Monday morning quarterback, but Star Wars is Luke, Han, and Leia. And if you're gonna tell a story after Return of the Jedi, you should have told the story about Luke, Han, and Leia, and then introduced your characters within that context, instead of giving us a bunch of new characters and sidelining your beloved characters from the original trilogy. That was a mistake. That was a corporate mandated thing to do. That is a corporate 101. Well, we have to make we don't need characters that were created in the 70s. We have to appeal to a whole new audience. Well, the first impulse there might be true, but look no further than Creed. Creed used Rocky Balboa's character, even though supporting in Creed. That was a successful way to create a bunch of new characters that were completely locked into the old version. You have Apollo Creed's son, Adonis Creed, and you have Rocky himself. Unfortunately, they tried to do that with these new characters, but I just think that the Force Awakens, it didn't work. It wasn't good. Wasn't what it should have been. At least that's the way I think of it. Is that it wasn't the way it should have been. And so I think now that the Skywalker saga is put to bed, it's kind of like, I was thinking about this when I was on the show talking about Star Trek novels. One of the things that makes a great tie-in novel is we know that universes like Star Trek or Star Wars or whatever, we're following a bunch of people, but there's a million other stories going on at the very same time. We just haven't heard those stories yet. So there's other stories that we can look at, and I think that's really important. And when you know those stories are going on, it's just a question of finding out or telling those stories and making them seem plausible in the universe. And we hunger for that. That's why people read tie-in fiction, especially some people like, well, Star Trek and Star Wars prove that you don't have to write books just about your main characters. You have a whole universe, and you can create new characters. You can create Grand Admiral Thrawn, and he becomes somebody that people like. And he was a fictional character created in the pages of Timothy Zahn's books, and then made his way out of the books into animation. And I mean, that's interesting, and you need to learn from that, because the people that are writing tie-in books, the good ones, are spending a long time thinking about the universe. They've done a lot of heavy lifting that I don't know why people aren't mining more of that. Seems sort of crazy to me, counterproductive. Anyway, Claude is here. Hello, Claude. How are you, sir? Bonjour, Monsieur Robert. Taika's Star Wars. There is a young boy who wants to be a Sith and talks to an imaginary Darth Vader. Oh, wait. You know what, though? I've watched that. Claude, you're a cheeky man. You're making funny jokes, but I think they're funny. So, all right. Alexander Wilson is back, and he says, I was listening to an NFL podcast. One guy said the first time he cried was watching Return of the Jedi, the scene where Vader sacrificed himself for Luke. He said he didn't have a father in his life, and seeing that brought many emotions to him as a kid. What a great story. You know, and that's why you can't underestimate the power of fantasy for people. That even though Star Wars takes place in a galaxy a long time ago, far, far away, and it's not real, when you're dealing with real issues and real emotions, I mean, that scene, you know, the whole throne room sequence at the end of Jedi, the way it's scored, the way it's shot, the way the Emperor is trying to play Luke and Vader off against one another, and the struggle. It's three dudes in a room. And yet it's the culmination of, you don't need, yeah, you've got lightsabers, of course, but you don't need massive action. It's all about psychology. And at the end of the day, all of our great stories are about people. You know, they're all about the struggles that we go through. And that was, what an epic struggle that was for Luke to maintain his goodness, even though he's faced with the terrible ultimate evil. I mean, of confronting the dark side. I mean, this is it, man. This was the crucible that Luke had to go through. And would he emerge victorious on the other side, or would he be destroyed? If he could not be turned, he would be destroyed. And he got through it. He survived. First he was afraid, he was petrified. But no, he survived. He got through it. And that's interesting on an NFL podcast. You know, what that speaks to, Alexander, is just how much ingrained in our culture Star Wars is. Star Wars is almost a rite of passage for everyone. It's like it's become a fairy tale that all children hear. You know, and all children the world over, they experience Star Wars. It's something that appeals to you when you're young. It appeals to you when you get older. And I think that's its power. Is that whatever reason, whatever George Lucas was tapping into, the hero's journey, the Joseph Campbell nature of it all, maybe it's Jungian in some way. That's why Star Wars works as well as it does. I mean, I don't know. It's pretty amazing, but it's interesting that on an NFL podcast, I just love that idea. I think it's fantastic. I love to hear that. So, yeah, that doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me one bit. So, yeah. Well, you know what, ladies and gentlemen? I think I'm going to bring an end to this episode. I know it's only an hour. I'm bringing an end to this episode of Robservations, the show about something. This is episode 206. Of course, tonight at 8 o'clock, I'm coming back. I'm coming back with Elizabeth Gwendolyn Bell, the ace, the arbiter of cinematic excellence. She will be with me, and we will be discussing David Lynch's 1980 masterpiece, The Elephant Man. So that's pretty exciting. So join us at 8 o'clock for that. I'm going to jump off early today, only after an hour, I'm sorry, because I'm trying to get these interviews, the Bill Sienkiewicz interview, the David Goodman interview up, and they'll be great to be a part of. So I'm going to, once again, thank my moderating staff, of course, Mike Bodden, and, of course, Detective Jim Boyers, and Greg Smith, and Louis Yu, and Jordy Lyons, and, of course, now the Richard. But you know what? I also want to thank, I never give enough of a shout-out to old Louis. I want to say thank you to Louis Yu, who always comes into whining about movies. He's a good man. And not that all my moderators aren't good men, but I don't give Louis Yu enough praise, I don't think, because sometimes he's in there all by his lonesome. So I want to thank everybody for being here. I, of course, will be on the John Campea show tomorrow, and I will be back tomorrow at 1 o'clock with, I'm sure, more scintillating news. Will drop. Deals are being made. The entertainment business is not stopping. But I want to thank you all for being here and being a part of the show. And remember, every person you meet has a story to tell you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to bring Robservations, the show about something, episode number 406 to a close. And I wish you all to have a better day, and I hope to see you later tonight on Elizaviews, whining about movies, and we're going to be whining about David Lynch's The Elephant Man.